Whether you're growing some flowers on your balcony, you might have a few indoor plants, you could be tinkering on the verge, got a veggie patch out the back, or you might even have a garden as big as the George Brown Botanic Gardens here in Darwin. Either way, we've got plenty for you on this week's show. So let's see what's coming up.
I'm visiting a bonsai collection with a twist. Its creator has focused on highlighting Australian native plants.
I'm at the Department of Agriculture and Food in South Perth, where they've developed a new tool to enlist the help of gardeners to locate and report insects. I'm keen to learn more.
I find beauty in the Barossa. In a district where grapes dominate, this is a property where roses reign. 30,000 of them spectacularly displayed along several kilometres of wonderful walks.
Australia is famed for its beautiful towering native trees, but most gardeners wouldn't be able to fit them into their backyards. Or could they? Well, there is a way to squeeze a whole forest of native trees into a small suburban garden with the ancient art of bonsai.
I love bonsai basically because it just relaxes me and it calms me. I love getting my hands dirty, touching the soil, touching the trees, you know, touching the leaves.
Marcella Ferreira is a founding member of the Victorian Native Bonsai Club, and she has filled her small inner-city garden in Melbourne with her exquisite creations. What's your passion for native plants?
Well, basically because I got sick of working with exotics, but natives was just, I thought that it was just such an untouched, untapped sort of resource that we weren't really, you know, utilising to its full potential.
So what species are you using for your bonsai?
At the moment I'm trialling with so many varieties, but I'm finding that the best ones that are responding really well are callistemons, melaleucas, kunzias, leptospermums and some eucalypts.
So these are some of your prized specimens, I see.
Yeah, that's right. This is a Calitris rhomboidea. And yeah,
that's the native pine.
That's right, yeah. Calitris are really sort of a great species to make it native bonsai.
Well, I like the tiny little leaves.
That's right, yeah, the leaves, the foliage is just, you know, absolutely lovely.
And this is one of your melaleucas.
This is a Melaleuca lanarifolia, snow in summer.
Well, that's a very big tree. That's a
right.
Huge sort of...
That's right, that's right, it's a street tree, yeah, that's right.
And there you've got it in a pot, and it's a dear little one with the lovely bark.
That's right, the bark is just, you know, slowly stripping off and, you know, I'm just letting it do its thing. I don't like to force the bark to come off or anything like that.
You've got a number of different styles of bonsai here.
That's correct, Jane. So here we've got a cascade style, and that's representing a tree that's growing, you know, out of a cliff or growing over a you know, pond or a river or anything or something like that. So that's what that's doing.
And this is a complete opposite?
That's right. This is a informal upright. So that's basically just representing a tree that's growing in an open field where it's allowed to grow and do its own thing, you know, not being inhibited by anything.
Yeah, it's a lovely shape, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
And then this one?
This is a group planting. So basically here, or a forest planting, if you want to call it that. And this is basically just, you know, representing sort of something that you see out in fields and, you know, out in nature.
And then the other one is? And
that one over there is a, you could call it a windswept style. So that's just basically trying to represent something that's growing in a harsher environment, you know, being sort of pushed and still trying to make...
Clinging to the
soil and still trying to survive.
Now, there's a thing that you can't repot native plants. Does that affect native bonsais?
No, it doesn't, and it is a myth. The more you repot them, root prune them, the better off they are. The mix that I use is one that I make up myself, and it has 2 scoops of diatomite.
Which is diatomaceous earth?
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
1 scoop of pine nuggets, very small size. 3/4 of a scoop of cocoa peat.
That holds water, doesn't it?
That's right, holds the moisture.
Yep.
And half a scoop of perlite.
Yep.
And then I just mix it all in one tub, and then I end up with a very light and airy mix, which all my bonsai seem to love. It is addictive, as you can see. Yeah, there's a lot of trees here, mostly because it's just my passion for it is so big that I have so many trees here. So yes, it can be a bit addictive, but a good addiction.
It may look complicated, but it's easier than you think to get into bonsai, and later in the program, Marcella will show you how.
Acer palmatums, or Japanese maples, have become a very popular garden plant in the last couple of decades. And it's really easy to see why with their soft, flowing foliage. But one of the major pest problems I've found is the black aphid, like this. And it can devastate the plant almost overnight, like the tree down on the balcony. A wise gardener once said to me, "Pest control is all about observation. If you can get in early before the population explodes, the pest can be controlled easily. And this pest can be controlled with a contact killer, like pyrethrum. You'll need to spray over the top of the leaves as well as their underside. And you'll need a few applications over a few weeks to really knock them on the head."
Can I move a tree from the ground into a pot? Well, it really depends on the type of the tree. So probably you need to get some advice from your local nursery or garden centre. However, as a general rule, if it's a tree that's smaller than you and it's a deciduous tree, you could dig it up in winter when it's dormant and put it into a large pot, say like a wine barrel. If it's an evergreen tree, you need to know a bit about the variety, because many will transplant quite well if you move them and lift them in spring into a large pot. But some trees, like gum trees, don't like to be transplanted.
A common complaint about camellias is they set lots of buds, but the buds drop before they have a chance to open. When that occurs, it's too late to do anything about it. The most likely cause is moisture stress during the development of the flower buds. So during spring and summer, if the weather's dry, give them once weekly waterings, nice and deep, and feed the plants, and hopefully they'll not just have the energy to produce lots of flower buds, but they'll have the strength to open them as well.
Growing coriander is all about technique and timing. The first thing, technique, you never grow it from a plant or a seedling. They're a member of the carrot family. They hate being moved. The second thing, with your seed, sow it in the mild seasons. They hate the summer weather, so warm, moist soil in autumn or again in early spring, and you'll have a perfect crop.
Insects. Their diversity is astounding. There's the beneficial ones that help us in our garden, and those not so great. Pests capable of wiping out entire crops. I'm at the Department of Agriculture and Food in South Perth, where they've developed a new tool to enlist the help of gardeners to locate and report insects. I'm keen to learn more. Dr. Rosalie Macaulay is the Senior Development Officer in Plant Biosecurity. Why is biosecurity so important?
Well, biosecurity is important because it helps protect our food industries and also ourselves and our environment.
And how do the pests get here?
Most of them, they're hitchhikers with us. They come in on roads, on aeroplanes, on boats. All those mediums enable you to unwittingly bring pests back in.
And what role can gardeners play in helping out?
Oh, look, they've got an enormous role because gardeners are out in their gardens looking at their crops, and they're more likely to see pests and report those pests to us. And so they're really our frontline detectives. I'd like to show you this one, Josh. This is an Asian longhorn beetle on the right-hand side. So this beetle could be a threat to the Australian environment because it bores holes in trees. We don't know how much damage it could possibly cause if it arrived here. And it's very similar to the Australian longhorn beetle, which is on the left. And if you only saw one, it might be really hard for you to work out which is which. That's why we ask for everyone that sees anything they're not sure of to take a photo of it and send it in to us.
The department have developed a reporter app. Gardeners can take a picture of an insect and send it in for identification. What happens then once you receive it?
Oh, so our subject matter experts will have a look at it, and once they identify it, they send the response back to you, back to your email address and back to your device. So there's lots of features of this app, so have a look.
So what do we have here?
Well, we have here a little wasp. You can see this little dude, yellow legs and an orange and black antenna, so we know it's not a European wasp. But it's pretty hard to work out the difference between a paper wasp and our European wasp, so just get a photo, send it in, it's really easy. And another one that I quite often find in my broad beans is a green vegetable bug, which is basically a giant stink bug and it's green. And we love it when people send us reports of those because that's an inference report for another serious grains pest called a sun pest. So
what's the relationship there?
Oh, well, so the sun pest and the green vegetable bug live in the same spot. They look roughly the same. So if someone looks hard enough to see a green vegetable bug and tell us about it, then we know we haven't got sun pest. So it's really important data for us.
And whereabouts should people be looking? Just sort of regular garden activities and they'll come across things?
Yeah, most definitely. Look under and under the leaves, on top of the leaves. Look in the ground, look in the trees around your garden.
So let's have a look in here. Under the kale. Oh, a little bit of whitefly, but nothing really to worry about. Pretty common.
Yep, that's right.
But what's this one?
Oh, it's a native crane fly.
A local one?
Yep, that's a local one.
Very good, but I'd still be tempted to take a photo of that. I didn't recognise it, so...
No, and then we'd be able to tell you what it is.
Now, compost bins are going to be full of all sorts of insects, most of them doing a good job.
That's right.
What have you found?
Well, earlier this year, someone in Perth reported a sweet potato weevil to us. She didn't know what they were. We knew what they were, and we asked her to look in her compost bin because she told us that she'd thrown her waste in there. And that was really important because if we hadn't gone and eradicated the sweet potato weevils in her compost bin, they could have ended up in her garden, and suddenly we've got another pest.
And they would have been spread all over the place.
That's right.
By the way, you need some moisture in here.
We do, don't we? I know.
Rosalie and the team are happy to take inquiries from all over the country, and they hope the idea will eventually spread countrywide. You'll find the details on our website. As gardeners, we get a terrific resource for identifying insects and controlling pests, and the Department of Agriculture and Food get the data they need to help keep our crops protected.
Traditionally, grape growers plant a rose at the end of every row of grapevines. The idea is that the rose acts as an early warning indicator of fungal diseases, which could potentially devastate the grapes, sort of like a canary in a coal mine. I'm in the famous winemaking district, the Barossa, near the town of Lyndoch. In most vineyards, there's hundreds of vines for every rose, but here, the roses are the main game. There's around 30,000 of them.
I did promise my wife a rose garden, but and she got it.
Mark and Mandy Creed took over this winery, event and accommodation property in 2008. They continued the rose planting begun by the previous owners. Mark and Mandy have learned from experience and the advice of experts.
We would have between 2,000 and maybe 2,500 different breeds of rose in here. So we've got an incredible collection. The rose experts use it as a farm almost. It's a stockpile of roses or a museum of roses. They can come back here and take cuttings, propagate them, and obviously develop and sell them. But we also, in exchange for that, they'll give us back roses. What's this one here again?
This is Graham.
Graham Thomas. It's such a beautiful
love
one.
it. Yeah.
Wonderful aroma.
This is Serpentine Lake, and you've got these beautiful pink and white roses here, the Bonica and the icebergs. And I think it was just planted to be really pretty and serene, that part of the garden where you can just chill out.
Oh, it is gorgeous, and Bonica is such a reliable rose. It doesn't have a scent. However, it flowers for 6 to 9 months of the year, looks fabulous, picks well, no disease. You know, it's a great rose for beginners. And even icebergs, even though they're much maligned, I think they're a fabulous rose. I mean, it will flower for 9 to 10 months of the year, grows in the shade, doesn't get disease. And even if you don't like roses, you can just, you know, give it a haircut like a shrub.
Yeah,
Great rose.
Yeah, it is perfect.
Now, I would imagine that this garden actually has colour and interest all year round, not just when the roses are out. I can see geraniums and hollyhocks and nasturtiums all blooming.
We're lucky to have a garden that even without the roses, it really does look spectacular. In the winter, of course, you've got the natural greens coming through. In Mandy's case, she's a passionate bulb grower, so we have beautiful bulbs and she's been developing them through the rest of the garden.
Now, with all these trees, roses and trees don't typically work together. Do you find it's a bit of a challenge?
Fairly major challenge. The trees really do suffocate, especially the conifers and the pine trees. The needles really do suffocate the roses quite badly. And also we have water issues, so they miss out on some of the nutrients in the water. We're not trying to replant in those areas. We just know it won't work. So we let nature take its course and we focus on the areas that can survive nicely.
Now, I do notice that you mulch, and obviously mulching can reduce your watering significantly by up to 70%. What's your mix of mulch?
So we've been able to take advantage of a local resource in the Barossa Valley, which is grape marc. Now, grape marc is the leftover product from winemaking, where they press the berries and you're left with skins, seeds and stalks. So we do a mix of about, say, 3 buckets of grape marc to 1 bucket of wood chip, and that gives us a nice thick covering that will last, I think I've seen some of it last for up to 3 years in certain parts of the garden.
And the grape marc particularly really stops those weeds. If you look at a section of the garden that's had hay on it to a section that's had the grape marc in it, the grape marc is hands down winner for no weeds coming through.
Now, look at the fairy. I just love this rose.
The fairies have become just a wonderful border plant for us. As you can see, you know them well, don't you? They're prolific, and we use them a lot for just gentle decorations.
As a child, I grew up picking bunches of these from our garden to sell in our florist shops.
Aww.
And that, you know, you just get 2 or 3 in a vase, and it's wonderful for a posy. It's a beautiful rose. I want to show you something. Every now and again, a rose produces a branch with different coloured flowers to the parent rose. Here we can see this lovely dark salmon pink against the paler pink parent. Now, the interesting thing is that this is called a sport, and if a rose grower thinks its qualities are significant enough, they can actually propagate from it and a new rose is born. That's exactly what's happened here. And Mark and Mandy have named this one Barossa Chateau. So you got to name your own rose.
We did, and it feels like it's a little part of us now in the garden, so it's just really beautiful.
Now, the garden looks spectacular, but it hasn't all been a bed of roses, has it?
We've had our challenges, and I think when we first came into the property, we were suffering quite a bit from drought, and then, of course, that reversed and we had a few years of very wet weather. So, so we've had some serious flooding in the garden. Probably 14 acres were underwater last time, and it took about up to 3 weeks for the water to dissipate. If nothing else, it taught us how robust and tough the roses really are. So they're pretty amazing.
So, Mark promised you a rose garden. Do you ever regret what you wished for?
Never, never. I love walking through the garden. This time of year, we walk through the garden every day, and people say, what's my favourite rose? And it's the rose I see on the day that's sparkling the most. And they really do bring a lot of joy to people, and they bring us a lot of joy too. So it's all worth it.
I like to think of myself as an organised gardener, but that doesn't mean that I garden according to a calendar. I look at my plants and take cues from them. For example, when chickweed starts to grow in my garden, that's a reliable indicator that the cool seasons have arrived. And that's the ideal time for me to sow things like watercress, chervil and dill. They like the cold. This plant here, this is amaranth, and it's a leftover from last summer. When amaranth seedlings start appearing in my garden, that means that the warm seasons have arrived. So I can sow summer crops, things like snake beans and watermelon, with the confidence that they will thrive. Now, what's the point of learning these cues? Well, it makes you a better gardener. You'll be more successful. But I think there's a little bit more to it than that. By regularly observing your plants and learning to work according to their cues, you get sucked into the joy of gardening, and that, well, that's beyond price.
Earlier in the show, we visited Marcela Ferreira's amazing bonsai collection. And now we're back to show that it's not that hard to create your own.
An easy way to start off with is starting off with tube stock. Because natives grow so quickly, you know, it's a great way to start off with. And what you're looking for when picking, choosing tube stock is basically, you know, movement. Interesting movement, really close, you know, low down in the trunk, which here we can sort of see here. And
the little bend, you
The
mean?
little bends, yeah. Sort of anything interesting is usually bends and sort of twists and turns that give the trunk, you know, a little bit of interest.
So what's the next step?
So basically the next step would be to, you know, this little woolly tea tree has 2 trunks. Eventually I'm not going to, you know, require either one of these, so I just make a decision of where I want to go. So in this instance, I'm going to go with this one. So what I'm going to do is wire up the trunk and put a bit of movement onto that, bury it into the soil, not too far down, and then wrap it around the trunk. Sometimes with tube stock it can be a little bit difficult in terms of movement, so just be careful.
You mean fragile? It could just snap.
It could snap, but also because it's sort of a bit loose in the pot,
Yep.
it can, you know, be a bit fragile, so just be careful. So you're not tightening, you're not putting the wire very tight around the trunk.
No, you're not strangling it?
No,
It's
that's
just-
right, because
just
it's going to
simply-
be growing fairly quickly, so
Yep.
you're just sort of simply wrapping it around.
Yep. Oh, that's amazing.
So look, it's sort of like trying not to do a sort of lazy bend.
Yes.
So I'm just going to put gentle
Oh, look
movement.
at that. Gee. And because that is a young sapling or a young tree, that's really just quite able to be flexible
right.
enough to get
Exactly
the shape.
right.
And how long does the wire stay on for?
Be cutting in fairly quickly.
So you
you'd be,
need to remove that?
Yeah, and then reapply it again.
Right.
Yeah.
Gee.
And it'll set in fairly quickly as well. So
What do you mean set in? It'll keep the shape?
that's right. It'll keep
Okay.
the shape. Yeah. I like to sort of, you know, find out how the particular species that I'm working with grows naturally in nature, and I try and replicate that if I can. And as the tree matures, then I'd be wiring the rest of it up.
Now we've got our shape, comes time to repotting.
That's correct. So basically what I do now is that I like to pot up all my, pretty much all my growing on stock into orchid pots.
Yep.
I just find that the drainage and the aeration is just really good, and they grow really quick in these.
Yep. And what's this?
And that's just mesh that just I put in there just to stop my potting mix from
falling through.
falling through.
All right,
Yep.
good. Okay.
Okay. So I'm just going to fill up to about halfway on the pot. So the next step is to basically remove the tube stock out of the tube.
Yep.
Because it's not going to fit in there, I basically just cut halfway through.
Oh, you're a drama.
No,
Oh.
the natives love it.
Do
They don't,
they?
yeah, they don't mind it at all. And I've also cut through the
Yes, the major taproot.
yeah, the taproot, which it doesn't need.
So, in other words, those roots are just going to reassemble and start to
That's right.
get all fibrous
Yeah.
again.
So when we're looking for in bonsai, what we want is we want roots that are going out
Yes,
sideways.
not so much down.
That's right. Place it in the pot there.
Yep.
Just backfill.
Pot it as normal.
Pot it as normal. So what I normally do is I just put a little bit of slow release fertiliser, just put it over the top, and that's it. And then I leave it, and water it.
There you go. Why not get out and start your own collection of bonsai?
Now, if ever you're looking for some inspiration, why not make a regular visit to your local botanic gardens? They're packed with plants and great ideas that you can take back to your place, and they're pretty relaxing to just hang out in. But for now, that's it for this week's show. Let's have a look at what's coming up next week.
I've done all the preparation and planning for this little sideway, and today is the fun part. A bit of creative construction and some planting for food, fun and flowers.
Pests and diseases. We certainly don't need any more in our gardens. Well, I'm visiting the latest quarantine facility, which does everything in its power to stop the overseas nasties sneaking their way in on imported plants. And it's fascinating.